First of all, thank you very much for coming to Bombay and to Somaiya Vidyavihar. I have two questions for you, Your Holiness. One is that I know you travel all over the world meeting people and giving teachings. But when you're not teaching or traveling, what is a typical day in the life of the Dalai Lama like? Please tell us about your routine day. And the second question is, I've been reading that the Nalanda University is being revived. So can you tell us about your involvement in the revival of the Nalanda University at Rajgir?
Okay.
Thank you.
가서 당구 등한데 파수 뭐시면 그걸 같이 갔어. Then firstly, as a Buddhist monk, my daily life usually carry according the Vinaya rule, according Mula Savasiddhivatan Vinaya or Patimoksha, the precepts, 253 precepts. So we keep using these precepts as a monk. Then perhaps as a student of Nalanda masters, whenever I have time, I always read, study, particularly Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Shantadeva. Mainly, you see, these three, they are text. I always see, read, think, and almost a daily basis meditate. Then, also as a practitioner of Tantrayana, Tantrayana, also you see some meditation. As a student of Madhyamika philosophy, analytical meditation. Then, as a student of the Shantadeva, is meditate on altruism. So these are my main practice. So each day, I got up 3 in the morning, then meditate about 5 hours, like that. So then usually from 3 up to 8:30, and then meeting with the people. Then open my mouth, blah, 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 that way. And about 6:37, sleep. That's one important meditation. Very sound sleep. No sleeping pill, no tranquilizer, completely relaxed like that. So I think these practice altruism and sort of understanding about emptiness, immense benefit to bring inner peace. So I carry that kind of life. Now I think nearly 79. I feel, although refugee, but my life, you see, carry quite useful. So I don't know, another 15 years or 20 years, I don't know. I will carry it that way. Then second part, Kaza. Yes. When 1956, when I came to India, actually the government of China, People's Republic of China, is give some fund or donation. Actually, the check I carry on behalf of Chuanle and one function at the Nalanda, Pandit Nehru there. Chuanle, all the certain, some illness or something. So he asked me, on behalf of him, I should carry the check with Chinese ambassador, Delhi. So at that time, Hindi chini bye-bye. I also, you see, as a sort of high sort of position, Chinese sort of People's Congress. I was the deputy chairman of steering committee, right? Steering committee of the People's Congress, like that. So then, after 59, although you see that project carry, but not very sort of, I say, rigorously, right? Then one time, the former president, Abdul Kalam, I really sort of respect him, admire him. Poor, come from poor family, Muslim background, eventually become great scientist, then become Indian president. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, very humble. And also she's showing genuine interest about the altruism, or Shantadeva's book. Yeah. So one time, you see, he connected that project, Nalanda project. But then, in that project, some politics there. So eventually, Abdul Kalam, I was told, resign from that responsibility. So I have no direct contact like that. I don't think any necessary translation. I think, okay. Now, next question.
Your Holiness, I once had a dream in which I asked you a question, but when I woke up, I couldn't remember the dream very well. So I'm very fortunate to be able to be here to ask you in person. The question is, what is the essence of taking refuge?
Karsa.
The essence of taking refuge.
Nilam jilam asane. Essence. What is your question?
What is the most important thing about in taking refuge, when you take refuge to the Buddha?
That's, of course, all major religious tradition. Some kind of refuge somewhere, refuge. All sort of tradition have. For example, Christians is a single-pointed faith towards God. Muslims, single sort of pointed faith towards Allah. So likewise, so all major traditions, you see, the single-pointed sort of faith towards one's own, or say, a God or teachers, like that. And then Buddhism, real sort of protector or refuge is Dharma, not Buddha. Buddha simply teach us Dharma. Dharma is the real protector or real refuge. So that means Dharma not outside, but within ourselves. Wisdom, warm-heartedness, these two things are eventually reach certain level and then become Dharma. So once you see the real Dharma develop within ourselves, then you, kasota, you then saved from a certain level of sort of kasota, samsaric sort of what's the levels like that. And then Sangha, you see, kasota, community. See, like I think one student, the first class, there's no sense of competition, positive competition with 10th class or 12th or 15th class, same classmate, then there is a sense of sort of more competition, positive way. So competition, there are two kinds. Destructive competition or negative competition is in order to you become top, create some problem other. That's destructive competition. That's bad. The positive competition, sense of competition is, so you want to be top, like other. And even, you see, your classmate helping them reach top. That sense of sort of competition is positive. So you see, take refuge to Sangha that way. You see, those individuals who already reach in certain deeper experiences, then kasota te miktu kasore ka
Look,
ka
take their example.
this is correct.
Correct.
That chemdo kasa
Take their example.
ka
Take their example.
take their example. Yes, like that. So thank you, my teacher now. So that's Buddhist way. Buddham Shanam Gacchami, Dhammam Shanam Gacchami, Sangham Shanam Gacchami. Main refuge is Dharma, not Buddha, not Sangha. I think yesterday also I mentioned Buddha like doctor. Dharma is like medicine. Real sort of curing your illness is not doctor, but medicine. So Dharma is like medicine. Sangha like nurses. With their help, you can cure illness more sooner, more quickly, like that. Like that. Next question.
Namaskar, Your Holiness. The question is, when we talk about the Mahayana and the Lotus Sutra, in Lotus Sutra, we know that it talks about the last sessions which Buddha gave to the disciples. It talks about the way of life to be lived and how it's to be done. So how do we make it current in our lives today? Because as you said, as per the region and the people, it has been taught to us. So how would you enlighten for us to be go ahead for our generation?
Karsa.
Summarize is in Lotus Sutra, how we make it current for our generation today and take it ahead for us.
What the other?
Tamju pegar nala, chita chue nyamle che mangbu sung xias. Ta sung ba di tingsa tu ju de jarni, ni nyamle che khande che boinas.
Sorry, I haven't go through so thoroughly about that sutra, so I don't know. So I should learn from you. My knowledge is very limited. But some sutra, you see, merely mention about Sukhavati, some heaven, and some Chinese tradition, and also Japanese tradition. You see, reading these texts or these sort of the sacred books, some of them, you see, believe just reading these books, some sort of prayer, you see, helpful to reach that sort of realm. That I doubt. Just reading and some prayer, then no need dharma. Like you see, take refuge, doctor, without taking medicine, how can cure?
Karma has to be there.
Oh.
Karma has to be there.
Oh. So I think it is better to read more books do not rely on one book. That's better. That's why you see the Buddha's own word, which translated into Tibetan about 100 volumes, different sutras. Then more important, the commentary wrote by like Nagarjuna or so on, these are great masters, about 200 volumes. So we have to read, study. Then you get the fuller picture like that. Okay.
Yes.
That's our way, including myself also, that is the way. Read more books, and particularly useful, read book which say certain point contradiction. It's very, very helpful to get deeper meaning. One book state or hold some views, then another master, you see, debate about that, criticize that. Then, you see, you get the opportunity to further analyze what is this sort of master's, what is behind of this master's view. And the sort of critical view, another sort of master. So what is their sort of thinking, their reasons. That immense help to get deeper understanding. Like that. So like this morning I mentioned Buddha Palita and Bhavabhiga, serious discussion, rejections. And then the Chandrakirtis, you see, series of discussion and refute some of the Baba Vega sort of argument. So very, very helpful to get deeper understanding. You just read one book, then fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. It's not a proper way of Nalanda tradition. Thank you.
Your Holiness, today you are our master, so we want a direct answer. Can you hear me? Okay. I said today you are our master, so we'd like a direct answer. My question is, we talk about karma and good and bad, but the definition of good and bad changes from time to time and from culture to culture. So how can that be a reality of distinguishing between good and bad karma? Especially if what is very attractive about Buddhism is the concept of shunyata. So if you have shunyata, then where is the question of rebirth and different goals?
Karsa.
Lede hiyo mukabla yaga da duga seji sungu yorobas.
Oro.
Da gewa da migewa. Da yaga da duga seji rishung da mita da nedan da mita da so so tadan kha yorobas.
Right.
I khande se yaga duga se khande chigla se sha go yonas. Enta na shin ge tungpa ni ge korji he yung. Ene yan tu so hidan to samya so ro ji cha yung yorobas. Tinte hi.
Yes, the first part, the theory of karma and good or bad, or sin, or because of the virtues. Yes, due to different philosophical views, you see, the definition of these things, there are differences. But from the Buddhist viewpoint, and particularly Madhyamika philosophical viewpoint, then good and bad is relative. Entirely depend on the circumstances. The ultimate sort of demarcation is something which benefit to oneself or others. That's a positive. Any verbal action, physical action, or mental action, something harmful to other, eventually harmful to oneself. You see, that considered negative, no absolute. So, and I think yesterday also I mentioned it, under different circumstances, same action, under certain circumstances, the Buddha's even Vinaya mentioned certain point at the beginning he allowed, then later he rejected. he prohibited. Similarly, initially, sort of he allowed, he rejected. But later, he gave some exception. Under such circumstances, it's okay, like that.
What is the connection with shunyata then?
The shunyata, you should now, yes, among these 17 great masters, you see, many of them criticize Nagarjuna's sort of view or shunyata. They consider, according to Madhyamika's understanding about shunyata, is nihilism. If you have sort of very because of the serious interest, then you should read Nagarjuna's the Madhyamika Mulakarika, particularly the 24th chapter. There, he mentioned all the objections come from Chitta Mantra and some other sort of school of thought. Then he answered. So the essential sort of answer is shunyata, not nothingness. Shunyata means absence of independent existence. It never denies existence. Existence is there.
हाँ जैसे कि हृदय पाग्रता सूक्त में कहा गया है कि जो रूप ही शून्य है, शून्य ही रूप है.
So, physical form is empty. Empty is form. Now, in this case, empty of the form. So, empty is the basis. Form is the basis. The empty of the form is the
property.
Its quality. The very form, that existence is not by itself, as quantum physics say. If you investigate, you can't find objectively. But it works. So it exists. Now, for example, if you analyze, you see, yes, now, for example, if you analyze my hand, you can't find piece, particle. Just wave. Nothing. But you can't say, now, you cannot use hand because you can't find. Objectively, it does not exist. It's foolish. Very useful here. Like that. So then, hand is there. Even animal, you see, kasate, recognize. You see, when your dog become a little bit naughty, like that, the dogs also, you see, realize, oh, it's effect. However, if you investigate, you can't find. So, hand exists. But if hand, its existence, the way appears, then the hand must exist objectively. Then when we find out, analyze, you must find. You can't find. So, absence of independent existence, that is shunyata. So, form is its own emptiness. The form's emptiness is form. Patita samupanda.
The Tao of physics. The Tao of physics.
Kasa. Oh, did it? Yeah, like that.
Thank you.
So quantum physics, you see, they try to find, they take for granted things must objectively exist. So when they investigate, you can't find. Then they find some dilemma. The Buddha, 2,500 years ago, and Nagarjuna, they already solved that problem.
I didn't say physics, I said the Tao of physics by Fritjof Capra, who talks about the particle and the wave. what you said just now.
Karsa.
The freeze cobra singing the Tao physics a tapes tea or
Oh.
Tina like to tend to the Chebachi or Tinta Shessions.
Oh.
What you
Let
said.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah. Your Holiness, I am a great admirer of you and of the Tibetan people, and I'm very happy to be here today. My question is very simple. Yesterday you talked about love without attachment.
Mm.
So when I love people, my family, my friends, I get attached to them, and if they are not there anymore, then I suffer. So how can I love them without getting attached to them?
Actual love, as I mentioned yesterday, which is not oriented about others' attitude. So, usually our love is very much oriented about others' attitude. So there is attachment. And as soon as attachment involved, it becomes biased. So, love, hatred go side by side. So therefore, in order to develop unbiased love, firstly, you have to practice detach, equal. Then develop love towards entire sentient being, or love equally your friend or your enemy or strangers. That's a genuine love. That not spontaneously come, but through training, use our intelligence. Okay.
Okay.
So not easy. Genuine sort of the kasoda, love with attachment is more or less spontaneous, biological factor. However, that is as a seed. Then use human intelligence. Then it become higher level, detached. Meantime, fully sense of concern of their well-being. Okay. Thank you.
Your Holiness, thank you for teaching in Bombay. I have a small doubt. While doing the Lambram prayers, when we do the supplication practice, we usually do the supplication first to the lineage of extensive deeds, and then to the supplication to the masters of profound view. But in the teachings that you were giving today on the invocation to the 17 masters of Nalanda, we did the profound view first and then the extensive deeds. Is there a significance in this, or is it just?
Kasa.
Lama Chopa teachings, we first do the supplications to the extensive deeds and then to the profound views. So the first we do Maitreya, Asanga and all that supplications, and then we do Manjushri, Nagarjuna and so on. Whereas today we did the first one, the first set is the profound view, and then the second set is the...
Ka.
Korim ki chebar jorol.
Ka.
Tanda the pindu chudu and Sundip taking cheba kablas.
Oh.
The Korim jior was.
Oh.
Namjung of the Jajin Juju, the Samuda Yu, and Korim Dodanji was.
Oh.
Did the test Majumbachi dos. The Karinas.
Korim
Samuda
de-
Yu.
That day, because of squinces array. Squinces, the 17 masters, not necessarily teacher, student, no. Some like teacher, student, some not. I simply sort of say compose that. Firstly, Nagarjuna, of course, senior. Usually Upaya, Branja, Upaya come first, or right side. Branja, left side. So, according to that, Arya Asanga, right side, Buddha's right side. Nagarjuna, left side. But now here is the seniority. And also philosophical view. The Madhyamika philosophy is the best one. You see, you can use, including physics, quantum physics, and many scientific findings very well go with Madhyamaka philosophy. The Chitta Mantra philosophy, if you accept that, there are a lot of contradictions. So therefore, philosophically, the Madhyamaka philosophy is most profound sort of philosophy, and also the historically senior Nagarjuna. So in the Nagarjuna and his immediate follower, Arya Devadis, and then Arya Asanga, Bosubant, Dignak, these things. So then, detail, a period when these sort of master born, I don't know. So, Western scholars, they know very well, oh, this master born such year and died such year. We don't know. We pay not much attention about sort of date. We pay more attention about teaching, their teaching. So some of these Western scholars known very well, date these things. They do not know what is the teaching. So, like medicine, yes, there is sort of date of expire. But teaching of these things, no expire.
Thank you.
So it doesn't matter when it happened, that doesn't matter. So long, the teaching really something can prove through argument, through reason, through scientific sort of finding. Then actually affect our emotion. That's important. That I can say definitely. Of course, the Chitta Mantra's philosophy does not affect my mind, my emotion. Madhyamaka philosophy really affect my mind. So, I consider myself a follower of Nagarjuna, not a follower of Arya Asanga.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for your presence. Thank you for your presence and your blessings. I would like to know where Vipassana fits into the Tibetan Buddhism, the practice of Vipassana.
Vipassana kasa, rational kar.
Vipassana di kawal fit chigiyunas.
Ka.
Pepe nangjo nala vipassana nyamlin che di tabro kawachik likigiyunas.
Vipassana, different levels. Or Vipassana, according grosser level of anatma theory, or selflessness theory, grosser level.
Yeah.
And then Vipassana, more subtle level of Vipassana, a more subtle level of anatma. Then it involves shunyata.
Okay. Yeah.
Then Vipassana combined with the deity yoga, visualize oneself as a deity or as a Buddha. Another level of Vipassana practice. Then Vipassana, the mind, according Tantrayana, particularly Mahadudra Yoga Tantrayana, there are different levels. Grosser level of mind, with this physical, a mind which based on this physical is grosser level of consciousness. At the time of dreaming, another level, more subtle level of consciousness. Deep sleep without dream, another deeper level. And faint, another level of consciousness. Usually we call unconscious.
Yeah.
But actually the energy or potential of awareness still there. Otherwise, once you faint, then impossible to recover. So the continuation of subtle level of consciousness still there. So the deepest at the time of death. Now, actually, last, I think last about now 55 years, number of occasions, Tibetan practitioner, after death, clinically dead, brain no longer function, dead, but body remain very fresh. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, like that. I was told one Christian priest also, you see, remain a few centuries, his body remain fresh. So, in any way, we explain the grosser level of mind, consciousness, completely cease because brain cease. But subtle level of consciousness still within the body. So some effect from that. So a few years ago, one great master, after he passed away, about 그저래 치수름치 니마 그저 쇼래. 가. 유스텝시. That master, after death, about I think 23 or 24 days remain in Montcourt. So we already have a sort of trained person, nurses at Dharamsala, and with certain equipment. So as soon as, after I think 4 or 5 days, as soon as I received the information, his body still remained fresh. So I asked the concerned people, should go there. So they went there and put all wires on dead body's head. So remain another sort of few more weeks, you see, remain, as I mentioned earlier, about 23 or 24 days. So some scientists, when they read the sort of also the indication through wire, they found some electric sort of wave in their brain. They say, normal way, impossible. One strange thing, and I think 3 years ago, in New Zealand, one Tibetan practitioner, in hospital, he passed away. So his body remained very fresh. So then, doctor, usually, you see, dead body, they do not allow remain in the hospital. But then doctor come, examine. They found this body, dead body, very fresh. So they allow, okay, you can remain that dead body in the hospital. So it, I think, fourth night, the originally, you see, the body, I think hand remain like I think usual way like that. Then the fourth night, next morning or fifth day, you see, they found his left hand now very tightly, you see, hold the one finger of this hand. So later I told them, oh, it is really pity. You must keep camera. Then we know how it movement, how it come. Pity, they not prepared. So it is fact. You see, the dead body, the fourth night, actually, you see, movement comes. So even we, difficult to explain. The all grosser level of mind cease. So physical movement, one of the grosser level of mind consciousness or energy. So that already stopped. And how it moved while the person remain in deepest, most subtle consciousness or energy, consciousness and energy. So we also, you see, feel some kind of dilemma, how to explain, like that. So it happened. So this shows the consciousness which based on brain, and then difficult to explain these things. The brain dead. So consciousness, which brain on, which because of the relying or based on brain, no longer there. Then how it happened? So we say, basically we say that person, the innermost subtle level of consciousness still in the body. So that through training, it can become wisdom. That's most powerful vipassana.
Thank you.
Clear?
Thank you very much.
So variety, many different level of vipassana.
How do we maintain equanimity in these days of lies and corruption? Because
Karsa.
it's so deeply rooted in everyone and everything, lies and corruption, that it's difficult to not be agitated and maintain equanimity in that time, in these times.
tingsa tuju de pe thukcha chemboje ane corruption da penjun jig macham ba da ta sangi singi hibu jewe kabla ane jig ta equanimity tanyom chol ne tuye hiding al ne tuye thabji khari yon.
I think the 6th chapter, this book, which I'm going to explain, and 8th chapter, really very helpful.
Thank you.
You see, the equality, equal, sorry.
Equanimity.
Katanyum, kaza.
Equanimity.
Equanimity. Balance.
Impossible. Come from outside. Some very successful, some unsuccessful. Huge gap, rich to poor. Education level also is some are highly educated, some are not very educated. Then equanimity, mental level. Think, as I mentioned yesterday, we all 7 billion are human beings, same. The way born, way to die, same way. The emotion, same. So that is, I think, a very powerful sort of reason to think, to consider entire 7 billion human beings are same. All have same right, same desire, same right. Then further goes entire sentient being, including animals, birds, insects, these. Maybe mosquito, little bit exception. My relation with mosquito sometimes not very good. Otherwise, you see, we can develop from the bottom of our heart equanimity. That we can train.
So can we not kill a mosquito? Are we allowed to kill mosquitoes?
Mosquito, when my mood is good, then some, and also the mosquito quite sure that particular area, mosquito, no malaria sort of danger. Then occasionally I give blood to mosquito. So then my curiosity is, mosquito, when you give blood, they suck. No? Then his or her sort of body become red and fat. Then sometimes poor stanche.
Send out some kind of bubble.
From his bottom. Then he left. No indication of appreciation. So dogs, birds, if you feed sincerely, they appreciate, isn't it? So I really, you see, curiosity, the brain size, which size have the ability to show appreciation. One time in Oxford, it's my talk, in the front line, some professors of Oxford, I asked them, anyone who have some knowledge, you see, which size of brain have the ability to show appreciation? Then nobody speak. Like that. So like that.
Thank you.
Thank
Deep
you.
appreciation and gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Holiness, I have 2 questions. One is, how can I overcome fear, jealousy, ego and anguish in my day-to-day life?
Karsa.
Nyiri nanglo la suzu nyere mize nanglo la ene shenang da semmaki ba da mile thakdo che da tuzu nyung du khandes tango inas.
I think 8th chapter, 6th chapter really deal that. For me, very, very helpful. 1967, I received oral transmission of this book. It really bring change. My mental state, really immense help. Okay.
Secondly, sir, what is the secret of your childlike laughter?
That's my top secret. I do not want to share with you. I think smile, laughter, spontaneously come. I think one basic reason, my mind always completely relaxed, no problem. So when I give talk, for example, like here, talk, I never felt I'm something special. I'm Dalai Lama. I never felt that. I just think, we are same. I'm talking another human being. That's my feeling. So when I talk with one person, or 10 person, 100 person, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, no differences. So that really brings me, relax. If I sort of consider I'm something very special, I'm an important person, then each word you have to sort of carefully check. That brings more stress, more anxiety. Then even small mistake happen, then your face becomes red. Useless, self-torture. If you consider you just one of them, the same. You have emotion, I also have emotion. Sometimes emotion creates some trouble. So like that, no problem. Honest, truthful, transparent. These things are very, very important to maintain peace of mind. Yes?
Thank you for your teachings. I practice Vipassana in the tradition of Mahasi Sayadaw of Burma. And I have a question regarding balancing pragya with compassion. Because as I keep practicing, I notice how things change, but then I'm sometimes confused, how do you balance compassion with wisdom? Sometimes it's better to do, and sometimes it's better not to do. So I just was wondering if you had any.
Kora Brahma ni yunge lama chigi chuju nyamle che ne vipassana nyamle chigi yose. Ente da chap chig do sam nyingje nyamle che bejon chigi yose.
Nyingje.
Lare. Da tini nyam do sungre nyamle che la tes kangi theg dos. Sam ne ya nyingje go ne hendo che ne yaga yobe soro. Sam ne ya tes maje ne yaga yo soro. Chig ti tes chikangi theg dos. Wisdom da compassion nyam do.
According these great masters sort of advice, our mind, our emotion, very sophisticated. So like illness, many sort of, because of the different virus or different things you see sort of involved, then just one sort of, one medicine, you see, cannot cope. Right? You need, say, more kasota, chick, ka, da kada, nuba changsi member, mentos, nuba, naso zom devati.
If you are afflicted by different viruses, for example, then it is skillful to use a medicine which has different potential to deal with all these different effects that has received in your body.
Just one illness or one virus, then just one special medicine can effect. The illness much involved, then just one medicine cannot sort of cure. You need a variety of medicine like that, including diet or exercise, many things. Similarly, our emotion, very, very sophisticated. So one single practice cannot cope. Therefore, variety of sort of method and variety of meditation and vipassana mentioned. So therefore, again, my advice is more study, should acquire more knowledge. Then I think the practice of Dharma is something like combat. So even the physical level, combat with warfare, combat more sophisticated enemy, your side also must have sophisticated sort of method. So similarly, our enemy is our destructive emotion. It's very, very sophisticated. So the counterforce, wisdom, also must be sophisticated. Just a single sort of faith cannot cope these sophisticated sort of inner enemy. That's because of clash survey. Clash. Very complicated. Clear. So again, my advice: read more books, study more. Should not rely on one source. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh. Yes.
My respectful obeisances to you, His Holiness. I want to ask a simple doubt. In your yesterday's talk, you said that Jainism and Buddhism, they emphasize on vegetarianism, but we see that Jain monks follow this principle of vegetarianism, but many Buddhist monks, they eat non-vegetarian food also, and whenever asked, they reply that we are not directly killing the animal, therefore we are not the part of the sin. But whatever comes to us while begging, we take that. But this is not logical, and instead I feel that there should be education about not killing the animals. What is your opinion on this?
Yes. Oh. Please explain.
Jainism the nangju ni duksu duryung du niga chidan non-violence practice shukchim bolab gyores.
Ka nangju da kasa.
Nangju da Jainism.
Jainism.
Tare. Ina da Jainism di pete karjong chang tingi yores.
Re.
Nangbe ki da gyundi baduzola duksu tibe kabla. Ene ngangzu kangzu ne simjin so chigi yomares. Ene soso chig da kari thoba da di lung chigi yorum duksu labjin da kanji shasangen dine duks.
To.
Di jumzen yang tak was ke thonggu mandus. Ene ko yang chig tablam chig thone be the pangtu ne yakko marbes.
Yes, I agree. Therefore, as I mentioned yesterday, we totally committed promotion of vegetarianism. At most of our bigger monastic institutions, now they are common sort of kitchen. Now stop completely serving non-vegetarian food. So we fully committed like that. So I appreciate your suggestions, your views. Very good. Thank you. Now I think the last question.
Yes,
I have
Holiness,
to go.
Many religions believe in the theory of incarnation. So, as you mentioned, there are 7 billion souls in the name of population in the 21st century. Then in the past centuries, there were less population. So where were these souls before?
I think if you believe Creator, then ask Creator.
No, but I want opinion from you because you are the 14th Dalai Lama. So, please, everybody is asking.
You see, I think basically, you see, the old major religious tradition, you see, deal with three sort of questions. What is self? First question. Second, whether that self beginning or not. Third question, whether that self have end or not. Three questions. So to first question, these three questions raised at Amritsar, one international sort of interfaith sort of meeting. One Sufi professor, you see, mentioned that. It's really wonderful. So all major religious tradition, you see, deal these three questions. Now, number one, what is self? Except Buddhism, all tradition except soul. Buddhism is, as already we discussed yesterday also, you see, we accept self there, but self, not independent, separate sort of soul, separate self, beside body and mind. So this is the answer, the first question. Then, whether there's beginning or not, according to theistic religion, when Creator creates us, that's the beginning. According to Christianity, this very life is the beginning of soul. This very life created by God. So that concept also very, very powerful. So this very life, you see, created by God. So that means your God is truly your Father. So very intimacy sort of feeling with God. More intimacy feeling, more willingness to follow God's way is love. Very powerful. Then non-theistic religion, no creator. So the Jainism and also Sankhyaism. Actually, I think 2 years ago, I met one great the Hindu the sadhus, really very, very knowledgeable. Unfortunately, many spiritual leaders, they are expert, they carry their pujas or these things, but real philosophical knowledge, if may I say so. So, perhaps now, maybe you see a little bit sort of show off, show off. But as a sort of as a student of a Nalanda tradition, and when we discuss, then difficult to develop admiration. Clear. So we study years, rigorously, and variety of, as already you see, you heard, you see the way we study. So that great sort of spiritual leader, really wonderful. Hindu follower, worship Shivaji. I also received some sort of also the ritual. Very good. So he knows different philosophical views, including Nagarjuna's view, Nagarjuna's philosophy. So I had sort of lengthy discussion with him. Then I learned, previously I'm not very sure, not very clear, according Sankhya philosophy. Then it becomes clear according to Sankhya philosophy, and also I think Jainism and Buddhism, these three, since no concept of creator, so our being beginningless. And also according to Sankhya philosophy, when we reach nirvana, Atma alone remain there, because of all phenomena, because of the dissolved in the jizo,
in the primal factor, they call it primal factor.
Dissolved that, and then self, Atma alone remain. That's a permanent sort of salvation. Right? That's moksha. So, no end. So similarly, Buddhism also, you see, no beginning, no end. So according to theistic religion, there is beginning. Non-theistic religion, no beginning, no end. So then world, now even you see this scientifically, when you see the more powerful sort of kasa,
telescope.
A telescope, you see, no limit of galaxies, limitless galaxies. So it is impossible to say only this Milky Way galaxy we human being there. Other limitless of galaxies, no sentient being, no human being. How can we say? So limitless. The Buddha stated limitless world. So we just like tourists, we fed up in some galaxies, then somehow we come here. Then a lot of trouble here, fed up, go another galaxies.
And we have return tickets.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Holiness.
Yes. Now remaining questions, I think, no, not now. No. I think tomorrow. Okay. So now, in order to achieve good life, mainly human life, where human being, now 10 kasada sinful action, like that. So it mentioned. Tadinda, kanshi lunga yile tamjel lekore yong tangde. 다다 펜션에 다다 샹라 펜션에 다도 셔바 데케바스 다 미기 주디 소 미주바 직셔 머질린 뽕 니체 그래서 미기 주봉 수준들다 미기 주봉 수준들 현지 충무 뽕 로인 뽕 직셔 되는 록사디 준셔 준 참마 식주 만제와 사데 나케체 제니 룡하게 미교와 düğünce dene 차던 nösen 매바바 니기 따와 용봉와스 dene 가소르데 낙심 nösen 록다 숨부데 뽕제님 다 미기주 뽕디 아니 कार्बोलालम चु रेस
फिर इसके बाद
On verse number 7 of the Ratnavali, it says, having analyzed well all deeds of body, speech and mind, those who realize what benefits self and others, and always perform these are wise. And it says, not killing, not stealing, forsaking the mates of others, refraining completely from false, divisive, harsh and senseless speech, thoroughly forsaking covetousness, harmful intent, and the views of nihilists. These are the 10 gleaming paths of action. The opposite are dark. And so the not committing killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, telling lie, not committing telling lie, divisive talk, harsh language, 7 called idle gossip, which comprise 7 body and speech non-virtuous action, virtuous actions, and then the 3 of mind make up 10. So 10 virtuous actions.
로솔이야. 아니 규요다 가사 가래니 꿀lun구요 저는 어떤데기 다 간다 losu malaba dinde kita soa sawa dene ini number misewa seadi chikta so jibara member yanchi milia chik kasuri pige chik dongdi don soro chik chabachen chik nawa chaya soro dindim jigi ta michiba number misewa dene ku jindangslab chik jimbe negabla kubada chayane ene jimba chaba ngadu namju jimba sayadi chik member chila maa chik taas chik tunru chila chik chaybe soro chik dinde member kuishabda chay rida chayane ene shayana kugayda jimba tonga kuy jindangs chöbas chik susu pamada yuandan chanda rāngli ini gyāmbā, chik ngāni chik yarab chabā sāngu yodabā, chik dēzhū chāla, ini pīki kuishab chayā, chabā tāng. Tēne chāmbā labdī kūnli yā, rāngli nabā chingin ki simchāni ini, dēwā dā dēndī ki chāmbā, sē chik dō pīki nyōmbā kōmbā, rīsumā chabā shin chāmbā kōmbā. Chik tēki yānda nīngji, chōlū mēbē nīngji siyāba nāshī, chōlū mēbē chāmbā sim. This donna chöni tenyi no sta chö chujuk sumbre ngondur jubyaage ta migi jubung ko chöjing ko thane ngondur lujin jubyaade che ta dine anda di kasa jige changmi dongwa do ta changmi dongwa de pyaji bhagyug yoyaage ta changi rasina bham이 차도고 봐. 자 dine 인도산에 changmi dongwa de ta ko nyamni shinda di yoyaage 튠징 소리 차디야래 ta dine losu milebada chik cawa michibura soba digi namingi lute namingi yonde ge suyarwa dindegi da suk sangwa da top chewa da ce rinwa da name wada soba dindegi nami yonde ge sangwa chigi lute sangbu top tuya wada di yudi di wada di sungwa chu judu sungwa imbari di nga ranzo rudu sungwa imi geje yamare da ganda sanjebe chu chinga samurlo di gyasi yame bachini nyamlin che kwaya
Then next verse says, avoiding liquor, seeking proper livelihood, not inflicting harm, giving respectfully, and which means practicing generosity, revering the wealthy ones, and then being loving are in brief practices of Dharma. And so here what is mentioned is, on the one hand, seeking proper livelihood means not indulging in wrong living, which has to do, on the one hand, with motivation, and on the other hand, obtaining things, materials, or things that is unfit to obtain, and so forth. And so and then in terms of the liquor, avoiding liquor, of course, avoiding liquor is a prerequisite. It's like a preliminary practice to avoid, to refrain from other misdeeds. Because once you take liquor and you get drunk, then the rest of the wrongdoings can ensue. So in order to avoid that, and you can avoid this by avoiding liquor, you can avoid the rest of the misdeeds. And therefore here, these 6 virtuous contacts are mentioned. On top of this, plus 10 virtuous actions, means 16 different factors for good livelihood, the good life in the next life as well. And so, in other words, what you are creating by engaging in these 16 virtuous actions is you're creating a condition for yourself to have a perfect sort of human rebirth or higher rebirth in the next life, which is qualified by 8 ripening qualities, such as having good figure and having long life and having all the necessities in life and being free from obstacles and to obtain those conditions and so forth. And so because of that, these 16 practices are mentioned for higher rebirth.
का अगर पालन करेंगे, अभ्यास करेंगे, तो हमको पुनः उच्च यौन में जन्म मिलेगा.
다전에 미기 주자베이나 아니 디 제부 냐바 용그레스 다디 쇠바이니 치종조 넘버 7 나바마 고웨이니 롱조퐁 셔서드는마 미기주 제부디 소모레 자장가 나미니 제불이야 삼단에 진주지게다 교디 아니 dom거야 빵거야 들이
तो इसलिए
And then the next verses mention the 10 results. What would be the consequences of indulging in the 10 non-virtuous actions? It says, from merely mortifying one's body, Dharma arises not, as it neither ends our malice for others, nor has any benefit for them, being disrespectful to the wide path of Dharma and so forth. And so these mention the results of non-virtuous actions. And therefore we should avoid engaging in indulging in them.
जो ग्रंथ है उसको पढ़ रहे हैं जो नागार्जुन का इसके काम में दिया गया है आप लोग उसको भी देखते जाइए अभी श्लोक नंबर 14 पर पहुंचे हुए
हैं ताने 참자라 제부테니 doctor 중스타 미기주 제부디 셴니 다 미기주 돈베 아니 까르부 기주 미기주다 아니 디안다 가래지 최주주도 돈베 아니 제부 상보 용그레 셴 송샤
इसलिए अगर आपको सब
virtuous actions and refrain yourself from committing the non-virtuous actions, and then you will have the fruit of virtuous actions or karma.
다 대대비 지
It says, as for those called virtuous, the results are the opposites.
동해면 되버리 대원도 비슷하네. 제대인에 아더 10월에 송요를 준준하래야. 아니 동해 돈도 로여장 동해니 롱만 죽스. 대원도장 띠무베 랑게 대와 다들 좀 쓰네. 간다지 그게 나도 મં구지 변 통기라 어제 답변 상물하고 싱글어. 미세나 답변을 누구리 도년에 지금 소독 예버도야 냥가 요래 레디네 미생 연구 요래 단디 그도데 너무 쑥 타고 쉬우시게 디 모르는 거 이거 신기리야 너무 배想하는 다네 아니 레서 요래 자 진짜 인도잖아 다 싸워디 된대기 다 미기주 다는 지 미기와 답변은 주로 안다 디 도미야 영향하게 탑시 쪼로디 그놈 셈게다 뇽몽기 로텔라 녀보던 거래 지송겨 다데 차단 셔단 띠무다 대예래네 미교와 마샤 셔단 띠무미 대예래네 겨인 너르되나 뇽몽 독숨기 끊을란데 레사샤바 다디 띠무세디 페지 다 대자고모로 미시바자로 자금에로 섬기 다 띠무 조당은 차라이 모르바 전다 띠무 다 미시바자로 자리이나 딱 가도 랜드를 몽베 머리보다 대코나니는 머리고 찌르고 거다 즉 머리보스 미시바스 럽샤나 다 들저 그래 자장가 신지 착배 착과 신의 당외 당와 되네니 인루를 딱 가서 그게 제 간단 내수 뭐마데 마셔버치는 달라 몽상게 몽버직 애니 낭세기 치즈로도 똑배 몽버직 야니 연구도가 되는 인도 되는 띠무 되게 애니 령아 예수가 네바지도 타는 거래스 다 마샤 미장 띠무 메시네 마샤 시단 띠무 메사 되게 띠무 메베께서 드샤베베께서 시나베베께서 되게 아니 레겨와 쌓인 거래스 어떤데 인도 자 디레 인도잖아 다 미기 주 아니 가서 그러다 다 미기와 다 간다 베게 dom고야겠다 레 주루데 dom야 그 dom단데 커도라 내 소하잖아 예마야를 sabah 대자마인바 사회 베게 꾸니 론지기 뉴모로도 냐못된 거래. 스타디 셰도가. 또 뉴모기 냐못대하다 샹려야래. 타바주야도 되게야래. 다다 금대야 뉴모리야 아니 당도 지겨 말이스.
तो हम सब जानते हैं कि
So verse number 20 says, desire, hatred, ignorance, and the actions they generate are non-virtues. And so here, the non-virtues that we create with our body, speech, and mind are said to ensue from our attachment or hatred or ignorance, and the three poisons, in other words. And the three poisons, of the three poisons, the other two are rested in the ignorance that we have in our mind. And so here maybe the ignorance is the mere not knowing, not knowing about the reality of things, and therefore we create the karmas. And so Master Shantideva says that though wanting to overcome suffering, they run after suffering. Though wanting happiness, they're foolish, as like destroying their enemies, destroy their happiness. And so, although there's nobody who really wants to create suffering for themselves, but what happens is because of our own doing, we create ourselves more suffering, more misery and troubles and so forth. That shows that we are overcome with these three poisons, and mainly that of ignorance. And so the non-virtuous actions of body, speech and mind ensue from this ignorance about not knowing the causality of things. And then it says non-desire, non-hatred, non-ignorance, and the action they generate are virtues. And so when you understand that these non-virtuous actions are something that you should restrain, that you should avoid doing, but how do you go about with restraining yourself and not just saying, oh, killing is very bad, I should not kill. But what you should do is by really developing the counter forces within yourself to these actions, and then by gaining conviction in them, then you combat those non-virtuous actions. And so in this way, you should develop the antidote to those non-virtuous actions within yourself by understanding the workings of this karma.
전에다 나도 몽구지기 차당을 하던 당도 지금 소리도 와. 자장가 처진에 I think in order to restrain harming other, we have to deal the motivation level. Usually, I think all these destructive emotion, we take for granted this part of our mind. You see, I think generally, we never pay attention. Try to reduce these things. I think here, as I mentioned yesterday, the ancient Indian psychology, including Buddhist psychology, it mentioned the 6 main minds. And then, minus is secondary. Secondary mind about 51. So there are different groups, destructive emotions, mainly 6, then 20. Another five group of 5 is the every sort of the mind always to see 5 aspects.
Omnipresent minds.
Then yunging
Then 5 minds ascertaining objects.
Oh, gyawachukji.
11 virtuous qualities.
Shinjurshi.
And then 4 changeable minds.
So you see, there are many details of explanation about sort of the consciousness or and including emotions. So it is very, very important in order to deal the motivation level. It is very necessary to know the whole sort of the system of emotion and its own causes and because of conditions. It's very, very essential. For example, practice of love or compassion. Just you see, repeat 1,000 times, love, 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 not much sort of effect. So you must sort of know the causes or conditions of love, the opposition of love. We should know. Like you see the specialist for certain disease, you see, have fuller knowledge about the causes of the illness and then antidote of that sort of virus or that illness. So with fuller knowledge, then deal these sort of particular sort of illness. Similarly, emotion, the destructive emotion, so have to deal with fuller knowledge about the counterforce of that destructive emotion. So that's why we call training of mind. Training mind, firstly, should know the system of the mind or emotion. Then bring conviction. Oh, this mind, this emotion, very, very harmful. I must reduce. So through that way, you develop some kind of willpower to combat that emotion. Then the weapon to combat that emotion is wisdom side. I think self-centered attitude, the counterforce is altruism. The distorted ignorance for that sort of the counterforce is wisdom. Not that, like that. So therefore, so you see, usually we simply take for granted anger, attachment, all this. I think actually, the biological factor, what do you call the mandala, brain, mandala.
Amygdala.
Oh, you see, the basis of development of these emotions. So we consider this something normal. But through experience, it's clear we can change this emotion with the help of wisdom. So therefore, they usually you see people who more sort of more self-centered attitude and more aggressive, then people say, oh, that's an able person. More compassionate, humble person. And then some people may take advantage. Isn't it? So in the society, we're full of competition, full of negative emotion. Then these destructive emotion, sometimes you see, consider something helpful. That's a mistake. So now, scientists, medical scientists, they say constant fear, constant sort of anger, hatred, actually eating our immune system. That's not Buddha's teaching, but scientists now say that. So very clear. And then way to develop these destructive emotion, as I mentioned yesterday, some scientists say these emotions very much based on mental projection. So that comes from ignorance, lack of knowledge about the reality. So like that. So I think most of you understand English. Those people who do not understand English, raise hand. Almost none. Then I think, yes, then briefly translate.
प्राचीन बौद्ध परंपरा के मनोविज्ञान परंपरा के अनुसार देखा जाए तो हमारे चित्त को प्रमुख मतलब 6 प्रमुख चित्त के रूप में और 51 चैतसिक रूप में बांटा गया है। उनमें से 10 कुशल और 11 कुशल प्रकार के या 20 फिर क्लेश इत्यादि प्रकार के चित्त में बांटा गया है। तो इन सारे
talk, His Holiness was saying that many of us actually seem to be enthusiastic about, engaging in acts or that come out of attachment or anger and so forth, as he's already explained, that we take for granted and consider them to be something like an ornament, like that those who have much desire and greed and anger are considered more efficient and so forth.
अवसर कर्म से हमारे विचार भी अवसर होते जाते हैं और हमें ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अपनी प्रज्ञा का उपयोग करना चाहिए और अक्सर कर्मों से बचकर हमेशा रहने की कोशिश करना चाहिए। ये अनुभवों से सिद्ध होता है कि अगर हमारा चित्त अगर गलत है तो हमारी प्रकृति भी बदल जाती है। अगर हम ज़्यादा घमंडी हैं या फिर संकुचित सोच वाले हैं तो हमारे जो सोच विचार है वो ही बुरी हो जाती है। आज के समाज में बहुत सारी प्रतिस्पर्धा एक दूसरे के पीछे लगे हुए हैं, एक दूसरे से भाग में लगे हुए हैं, तो इस समय भी बुरी भावना उत्पन्न होती है। वैज्ञानिक लोग भी ऐसा मानते हैं कि चिंता भय इत्यादि हमारे शरीर की क्षमता को नष्ट करती है। ये कोई भगवान बुद्ध के वचन नहीं है, ये हमारे एक जीता जागता उदाहरण है। हमारी रोज़मर्रा ज़िंदगी में ये आता है, इसलिए हमें समझने की कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि हमें बुरे विचारों से बचें और अच्छी भावनाओं का अपने अंदर उत्पाद करना चाहिए।
다들 천지 냐와 이다다 전주달에 남주싱스 대대비 미기주 에는 쿼터셔버 그게 빵배 에는 먼들류된 토그레스 당 먼들 나네 짱다 가셔볼 그게 다 지리 안에 디도가 시워 코에 풍부 패야리야 소나마인 벨레 사디기 둥이 둥에 슉차고여 등에기 년로패 소나물레 사디기 에네 응원들류된 다 응원들 해미류된 거다 응원도 미류된 또다 에네 더라 타비하기 규칙 다 미유를 해야 되게 삼단도 숨밀 기하기 레체니 코아펜직 레지 미라직 숨쉬기도 와. 그 대부 테메 예배 왕기. 사진이 이미지 전에다데 전주달에 남주신 하다 미 낭다도 대배 계시 개버 톱시. 삼단 세미 숨미 이제 창소 대와 용어치. 어다 대대변에 삼단다 지금 숨미 띵인지 냠네 제일도 전에 아니 메유에 사네 감공기 아니 걔는 죽그리스 디송래 자다데 디어라다 직전별 항동서야 지다 지들 레벨 항동 비바사나 니식도 와 직전별 항동 15코어 루지기 항동지 시기야래 디 학벌 통서야 서로 거절했으나 랑살을 라과 바래 또 와살을 라과 아니 광살을 아니 다 쉬워 간다변다 가서 오르나 다 지지거래 다 가다 랑서를 라고 다 대박함지기 소술 랑선 대박함디 배 대변 요모 숙심부 여대바 진짜게 다 라고를 때 봐. 아니 수수미 감 공모디디 쉬워를 때니 딘데기 다 달래니 생수를 거의 이제 매번 이제 가디베 이제 살 때니게 다 이지 투사 되게 더네 다 방동식도 와 시라가 나버 직대별 방동사 디곰네 ene samdeda sumilikia dishavere so oda dedebekone ene ngondo lami luden sambu tawyadi du teladene debutete ngondo chigres ta digi nego ngondo digi duya ta disonre
अगले श्लोक में खास करके कि
And then verse number 23 and 24 say that through these practices, one is freed from becoming a hell being, hungry ghost, or animal, which means the birth into the three lower realms of existence and reborn as human or good ones, reborn as a human or God, one gains extensive happiness, fortune, and dominion. So this shows higher rebirth, such as humans and gods in the desire ram, and then the next verse says, through the concentrations, immeasurables, and formlessness, one experiences the bliss of Brahma and so forth, which shows the rebirth in the form rams, Rupakai and Dhatu, and thus, in brief, are the practices of for high status and their fruits. And so what these basically show is that when we create the non-virtuous karmas or unmeritorious karmas, then we create the causes for called that project us into the lower realms, unfortunate realms of existence. Within samsara, we are talking about rebirth. Within samsara, are three types, like these three different karmas. One is unmeritorious karma, then which leads to lower rebirth, and then the meritorious karma leads us to be born as humans and gods of the desire realm, and then the unwavering causes or karma leads us to the form and formless realms. And within that, when this rebirth, we can also talk about the Vipassana practice in terms of pertaining to the worldly condition and then transcendent condition.
Jenda, any kasajuti, the Changjibai, Jen Tarbanamshan Dugiore. So that's Sanjay Tarbas Kadisha was Lavina, Chiji Shingong Solo, didn't remember chat. 当的长节呗，既作为人心通呢，哎呢，那么就所有这边，那么就他到了，哎呢，所有赢了怕听起，哎呢，大西的几乎他这边可多了，哎呢，他把是写下的，是大的阿妈是这个人做这个多啊，这差不多，但上节呗，熊呢，당시 자와 뒤지심 테네 따와를 줄버 인스 두지 풍부 뒤동데 텔라 다네 여마 인스네 어다 드 디팔리 슈나레 여서레 레자 슈나레 요레 따 다도 따와디 아니 녀몽 싸치기 요레스 자상가 타르바스야 데 진데게 다도 따와디 아니 다음에 관배 토네 다도 따와디 신유순 충네 any दादो तावा दोगो रेस पता जिसुंगे तदे बैलमेंटा छावता
इसलिए अरहत पद की या मोक्ष की
And then with regard to the moksha, in the Jain and Jainism and Sankhya schools, they also talk about moksha or called liberation. And then in Buddhism also, of course, we talk about called moksha or liberation or nirvana, but it's not something that is kind of a heavenly realm that you actually reach. Like in Jainism, they talk about some kind of a heavenly realm that you reach when you attain moksha. But Buddhism is not like that. And even in the case of the Sankhya school, they say that when everything, all these varieties of things are seen by the person as being manifestation of the primal factor, the pradhana, then the pradhana, called everything, just dissolves into the self, and then the self-conscious being is left alone, and that is considered to be the moksha. moksha, whereas in Buddhism, we talk about moksha in terms of understanding selflessness. And so by understanding selflessness, we counter the grasping at self, independently existent self, and overcome all the delusions. And
대소도 마세베 지 랭인 식비 배진 뒤절을 시작을 자 되는 인도산에 다 라다 뇨모 아니 다소 뇨모래 소 뇨모 아데 라다 뇨모 세베다 라다 뇨모 남도래 대다 저래 저번니 동번니 끼가 걸주스 제대제 맞아 표현을 유셔버디 kunlamar bichigi deshekebe kuduriya legja chigdela tongbo ni tu ngabo jus ta nishi somarbe ba nishibe tongbo ni tu gas cheni tongbo ni gi gas cheche chidurja tongbo ni tu ngabo jus lejuk sobchita odusle mudowa 자장가 다 tongbo ni la mongni 동번이 치질로도 또네 동번이 머리나 코 동번이 링나 타르바스 동번이 직 머리 니가 토네 콘데 셔야 독서셔야 자 드네 인도산에 동번이를 먹네 코를 경비야래 동번이를 먹네 녀모리 기야래 대다 저래 대다 저래 저번에 동번이已经 가고 요 동번이 동 가고 요 소야 되기 심기 취니를 먹네 레서기야래 다 레된 가야돼 심기 취니 뭔도 주네 심기 취니 치머시싱에 애는 될 투중고 거 애는 성중기 예시 대내 공중기 냠용께네 디르메 고민도산에 심기 취니를 몽밤 치질로도 또배 머리에 왕게 중에 아니 녀모데 상월로 취지 인수 다 줘야지. 그래서 드네 인도산에 타바타바스야 모든 조수서디 심지 춘이 들으셔요. 심지 춘이 루브르에 쯤어 녀부께베 떡이 다 단도 세베 심지 춘이 돼 타버셔요. 저 드네 인도산에 다 우모베 중게다 탈베 모로 샤 인도산에 춘이 들으셔야 하는 거도 심지 춘이 돼. 그래서 뒤대보도가 아니 감 대신 인부세야 뒤에 대신 내리사 가자 지선 정신 내리선 송샤 뒤에 전문 마법의 심지 춘이 되가 삼다 다 전문타다 방배 내고 단지 최신 셈디 전문타다 방인도 전에 뒤된 게 춘이 뒤에 다 지면 타고체 대대비다 춘이 뒤 탈사적사를 시행인도 전에 전문타다 방배 심지 춘이 뒤 청주사들이 모디사 모다 왜 모디래 그 모디래
모디
모디 지시 셈딩이 좀 마세가 받더라 그다 아니 좀 세루이 좀 거루이인데 시바 세리삼 디땡네 오늘 지시 좀 마방 베린달라 아니 정신 내리 세송샤지 좀 방배 내가 올라 청주사지 디 땡시 디땡 최전 다 조조 뉴메sem들이 뉴메sem디 마다 버린달라 감사하지 디땡 그 주마타다 세베 내가 올라 청주사지 어도스도와 자 드네 인도산에 따오 디 스보 코알로 코야게 싸워디 머리부 제용구야래 뒤에 머리부 니체네 균제를 몽베 머리바다 대코나니를 몽베 머리부 니예베 딱 대코나니를 몽베 머리부 되게 아니 가서 그랬다 타바토를 객식이 있는잖아요 대 점배 아니 대 점배 제라 근데 타바토바 쓰기야래 어디지 말이야 자상 어디 녀리를 샤네 드는데보다 녀리 토비하게 톱디 에네 다음에 나와들이스 전제게 다음에 나왔달라 에네 가란솔로 산jel이야 ngao nyambe logic toman yede ba indusane dendege da yamar susane takbaje chungares dende indusane jumdende ngobazo san jeni 아니 서시저저에서 너무시 두지대비 취지 코요니스 전에 술을 때 이제 고면에 미만 나지 나도 가서 never 차사베 전에 어디서 송도 자시름 나로리 가서 지지 셴베 지지 사죠 저는 두고 상에는 최대한 받아 로버 주세요 자시름 치기 로선 지지 셴베 춘디 셰버 고 도주네 지지 투에 거사
저것이
그냥 동북이 자는이야 자시로 자시득신 멋지 공을 자시로 로를 신고도 와 라스베르세요 말해 스비 오버 자시로 가 쳐서요 이리 쳐서 고보시베 게 자시득신 실루 주자래 괜히 뭘 무시하지 숨기 그냥 동북이 자는이야 자시득신 멋지 공을 자시로 로를 신고래스 nga mixe namre ya mixe nabe kudula nga talala ma insari dos pingo ya ta jush de shaba badi
तो हमें समझने करना चाहिए कि आरत क्या है जो हम आरत की बात करते हैं तो क्या चीज़ है तो सबसे
And so when we talk about the nirvana, Master Nagarjuna it identifies nirvana to be in Buddhism in general. Of course, it is identified as a state where you are free from all the delusions and all the negative emotions. And so Master Nagarjuna says when you end or extinguish the karma and delusions or negative emotions, then there is nirvana or liberation. And so nirvana comes through ending that those factors of karma and delusions. And Master Nagarjuna goes on further to say that these two, karma and delusions, come from our mental projections or preconceptions, and they in turn come through our constructions, mental constructions or elaborations or fabrications, and these fabrications are overcome or seized by emptiness. And so with this, regarding this verse, the last line could either be read as these elaborations are seized by emptiness, which means the understanding of emptiness gives leads to that, or they dissolve into emptiness or seize into emptiness, which means that the fact that when you realize emptiness, these delusions completely kind of dissipate into this emptiness, and therefore you attain nirvana. And therefore, seeing emptiness on the one hand is not seeing emptiness meaning that not understanding emptiness. There is samsara. You go around and round in samsara, and seeing emptiness leads you to liberation. And then, therefore, ignorance about emptiness leads us to the samsara, and because of this ignorance about the causality and how things are, when we create karma, and accordingly we suffer. And therefore, mainly here, ignorance is about the suchness, ignorance about the suchness of things, which means the true reality of things, mainly the suchness or the reality, the true reality of the mind itself. And so when you realize this true nature or the reality of the mind, then all these delusions that you have, the destructive emotions and so forth, are said to dissolve into it, into that suchness or emptiness, the nature of the mind, and then you reach liberation. So this is the main called nirvana, according to Madhyamaka tradition.
전에 어다 나라도 로리야다 통문에 관체 나 스터디베 시후데 나 링이 여대로 로셔도 와 근데 좀더 따네 진짜게 나베 로리야 지 링이 샤데야디 베리 예베 주지를 아니 풍불에 전선도 다 열었는데 조용 거 봐. 상로 대오를 차야지. 근데 다 여마를 전에 아니 맞대어 차야지. 기본은 진짜 짜스. 개발하는 작고 세스. 상로 요 스tam이나 아니 레던 요몽 세베 타르스. 아니 레 나사라 그게 수연데 내기 요몽 매버차. 아니 자원에 레 사도 쏴야게 요몽 매버차인데 레 사도 쏴야 매버차. 근데지 아니 내가라 아니 요몽 매버차인데 산에 아니 타바레스. 어느 타바 컨테스트 보레스 라바이나 레던 요몽 남도레스. 시보 코에 겨워디 코어 편지기 레지 총레스. 레디 요몽을 총레스. 요몽디 취미지기 남도레 총레스. 레던 요몽 남도레스. 취미지기 남도레 좀 가서 쉬어야 돼. 아주 천리고 되게 자주 구스타바스 남도 줬다버레스 송샤다 찍고 차대도 와. 레던 요몽디 취미지기 남도레 총레스. 취미지기 남도데 근데 총레스라나 템버 메신도 템버 줬다니 제대로 템버 짐베 아니 덴징기 트러블에 총레스. 또 스나도 냠뇽 삼스담베네 배는 합탈이야. 저기 배는 소소벽 막아서 자지기 그 지금 소소 떨었던 게 있으려나 이 마셔서지. 야 소소 가보여서 년지기 지금 그 지금 소소 두고 지기 있으려나 이 마셔서 용도가. 이 삼는 나라 지금 요매베 지금 딱배 나올 셔도가. 그 취미 남도 좋다니. 년디 배 상부배 요매버지. 자디 뱅냐바 요매버지 롤이야. 지금 여기 있잖아요. 롤 멋을 챙도. 대용야기 싫고 아세게 집어শু셔보시도 와. 자, 스턴데 미가와. 배프게 미두고 지금 배 아세게 집어시 롤레도. 년 스턴 이동 야 아세게 집어시레도. 지사브샤르샤. 다 진짜기 자다 년 자니 지세 다 지디 민장 따요 잠레 선사무스타요 보이나 그게 자스럽네 그게 라고 주서 입에서 그렇지 년스럽네 시부지가 초토로 현대 자다니 술을 뛰네 자다니 지세 마셔야 돼 누구도 매대로 지금 로르시 레인도잖아 배 다다 아니 셴 자니 사지를 지기 배 초토로 지금 로르야 시부대 예버 때니 되는 주민식 남도고 도대가 여버디 직로리야 이니 샤이르잖아 타고 다도 조다셔가 로디기 녀모디디기 로시 녀모디야르베 시르시기 어때 사르샤르샤 진대기 다 랑와 숙두버디 야마레 때네 딱섬레 삼바지 자인르잖아 되게 글로베 탐정이 놓고 지금 쏙쏙 차지 로데야지 땡데도 와. 내가 돈이 또 있으기매다. 돈이 또 있으기매지 동반이 따와리야. 가라 강성보다 심단이 오르 차지. 그다 지금 땡중그 대코는 있으면 지금 섬려야 펼시시 차야르시다. 지금 따서 땡중그 따와 상로시 담배이나 지금 상로시 차나 찬섭니네 지금 나온데 이디 지금 되는 주거지 로를 실기하는데 다 샤워다도 매 삼을 로를 폐지 샤임으로 와. 이 쉬울 편도 이거 소리도. 녀몽게 나셔로고 녀몽 남산 진리게 다 따요 고와 차가 되게 남산 요 매바도 수고요 말때 녀몽게 나셔로고는 쉬우지 숙적이 이거 소리도 와. 딴데 편도도. 그래서 왔다 들이 개발하는 작고 세한테 동원이 있을도 땡중기 대코는 있을 전에 쓰면다 맞는 다 라와자서 해야 봐. 지금 녀몽세하고 뒤 다더부도 두부 당해지래 코 매바 소토야 이거 지금 로를 샤이는데 쪼발래야 뽑발래야 지금 쉬울 섬래야 아니 이 쫀나슬래도 라 사발래야지 어디들 개발은 작고 세
तो श्लोक नंबर 28 में कि जो कि मैं की भावना अर्थात अहंकार की भावना हमारे अंदर अहम की जो भावना है वो हमारे अंदर बहुत ही जटिल है, उसे काटना चाहिए, समझना चाहिए कि वो उसका अस्तित्व किस प्रकार से है और किस प्रकार से नहीं है। कर्म और क्लेश के नष्ट होने के बाद ही हम अरहत पद को प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। ऐसा स्पष्ट है कि बिना कर्म और क्लेश को रोके हम चाहे कि अरहत पद को प्राप्त कर लें, बुद्धत्व को प्राप्त कर लें तो असंभव है।
So, verse number.
उत्पन्न होते हैं तो कर्म अज्ञानता की वजह से होते हैं, फिर अज्ञानता होने की वजह से और ये अज्ञानता हमारी क्लेश और जितने प्रकार की
25 says the factors of highest excellence. 25 says the doctrines of definite goodness are said by the conquerors to be deep, subtle, and frightening to be childish, to the childish who are not learned. And so, because of the teaching of selflessness and the realization that the Buddha had about it, he found it to be too deep and profound for to be taught to people who are so used to the notion of having some kind of a self-existence and independent existence of an I. And therefore, he was said to have actually stayed away from giving teachings to us, to his disciples in those days. And so now when we talk about nirvana, there is this natural quality that of the mind, which is the empty nature of the mind, and so because of which we can say that this, as long as the mind remains unenlightened, then to that extent it is called Tathagata Garbha or the Buddha nature. But once this mind becomes free from all these delusions, then the nature or the reality of the mind, free from that, is called enlightenment. And so as long as we remain unenlightened, that nature, the empty nature of the mind, is termed as the natural Buddha nature. And then the very quality of this empty nature of the mind, of this innate mind, as long as it remains unenlightened, it's within samsara. And once you become enlightened, you have reached bodhi or enlightenment. And so because of ignorance mainly about how things really are, we are in samsara, and therefore the Buddha, when you overcome this ignorance completely, then you have the nirvana, and that is what is termed as definite goodness. And the means to reach that goal is understanding of emptiness. Of course, we use because we are so used to this notion of self, independently existent self. When we are taught selflessness, then as the Buddha already said, that this profound, peaceful, and free from elaboration and luminous, unconditioned phenomenon that I have realized is so profound that it will not be understood by others. Therefore, rather than giving teachings to others, I better remain in the forest. And so this causes us to have fear in those of the childish, as it says, bereft of learning are thus frightened, so the victor says. And then verse number 26 goes on to say that I'm not, I will not be, I have not, and I will not have. That frightens all the childish. And so this also has the same kind of meaning because of we are used to this notion of a self that is there. And we all have this notion, and when we hear about something that is done by with ourselves as well as our friends and enemies also, that enemies and friends are absolute, and therefore when you talk about something good that has been done by one's enemy, you don't believe him, and when something bad done by those whom you consider as your friends are also not believed. And because of this absolute notion of an absolute friend and an enemy as well, and so we need to overcome this I do not claim to have the realization of emptiness as such, but because when I think about emptiness and dependent nature of things, this strong clinging to things having some kind of independent nature is kind of loosened, and therefore it gives me delight and pleasure and joy in my heart as well. Seeing that there is a possibility that we can overcome the negative emotions that are within ourselves, which have ruled us so far.
좀더 시간로거든 되게 다음에 따와서야지 아니 강사 랑제트베 제수트베 다음에 봐 시전에 왕 교로보 풍불로 때밤에 봐 양가를 지기야 되겠지 든지겠다 다 면제버리 든지기 다음에서 직시해야 돼 세상가 정안한 줄로리야 캬바도가 ngai lu ngai sems lava ina something like say my body my mind, it is correct, so we can say that. So beside my body, my mind, where is I? Now the concept of soul is something independent, separate. So that all Buddhist different school of thought, mainly four school of thought, you see, does not accept that. Within different school of thought, within Buddhism, Buddhist school of thought, the common sort of, the concept of selflessness is something only. Tagi understood that lungdigi kasa dajawa dujisim. Then tower giveaway, and duji pungu ditong de telatani yomain, sin di shude, or not da member wrestler, da member maris. Pena Chidriana, Sonola, then sing the java, dar teaching Pumbu nam dene, Guzo Simja Javain, South the Dick. Pumbula dene, Dasha is. Pumbule, younger to Daya maris, or that is one.
तो जैसा कि पहले कहा गया कि आत्मा का रूप किस प्रकार था, आत्मा किस प्रकार से अस्तित्व में है.
Schools of Buddhism do commonly accept selflessness, and here the commonly accepted selflessness is that selflessness where you deny the existence of a substantially self-sufficiently existent self, and so and then when it comes to talking about selflessness, here in one of the sutras, which I recited earlier, it says that this self is like it's merely designated just as a chariot is designated on the basis of its parts, and likewise the self is designated on the basis of the aggregates.
that the Shenyu Dadi Mabadi, that Dami, Duno, Shishalo, Jihulia, then the Kansa Dami said, the Shadi. That didn't Tangzin Te, any that Dumdamawa, Manguchigi, that Sanje Bedunama, Manguchigi, Tindegi Tadun Zimbe, any Tangzin Kansa Tangzin Te. Any civil call of Hoyag, Yomong saw the Dichigari, Tedebu, any Kansak Tangzin, Tip Pangbaina, any Yomo Doduri, Saswachari. That day, Gombulugi, Shamde, Chisi Pumbul Zinya, Tisitella, Nanziya, Nanziya, young lady, Lelejani, Kawaii, Sagata, Sum Digi. That Pumbu Temper Zimbe, Tenzin, Dotubashi Moshuna. 다 풍부 대버스 된지 참고 저기 다 풍부 대버스 된지래 다 뭔가 연구를 야 차라 연구를 돼 이내다 간다 풍부 대버스 된지 떡버시 뭐주나 풍불을 떼는다고 다 대버즈베 덴진디 자원의 파 순충투야 연구 말이 스타디송을 풍부 대버즈베 덴진기 신유 숨모숑거 풍불을 떼는다고 다또 진베 덴진기 신유 순충투고 말이 어다 되게 강사가 던진 그 싸워도 취지 던진 시거래 딱 금들 취다 강사서 이와 취야 돼 롱저버 다 강사 롱제제 풍소 주스니치 다 다미 샤인드산에 롱저버 다 다메베 다 다미직 롱제제 풍소 다도 모두베 다미직 니셴 강사가 때문에 취다미 니시도 다도 최이다면 시행기 샘서보다 우모번이기다 최이다면 숨겨 다미니 셴 다 다미니 셴에 안데 되는데부터 가서 우리 그게 샘서바에다 다르셔 강사가 등진 대 녀목지기 요래 대 뽕야 대 강사가 다미 좀 검네 아니 녀목 세토그레스 디송도가 다 공부르고 셔바 투모 모임부터 이르잖아요 안데 되게 샤마타고는 신기 풍부 댄지 마도고도 강사 댄지 도고 말이시는 송윤도 최이 다음에 또 두버지 뭐죠나 아니 강사가 다음에 저버 또 두고 말이시 너나 강사가 다음에 최이 다음에 써야지 동시学生은 뭐네 다음에 셔바 마도 각종 올 캬버려 말이시 모니지 주베 다 각자테 풍부 댄도 아니 여번 좀버데 강사가 댄 강사가 댄도 여번 좀버데 강사가 댄지 풍부전도 여번 좀버데 최이던지 자 대인년부터 강사 모니 두번 해봐 토등에 다가는 신기 풍부대모 풍부 가져다 모니지 뭐 주고 떡배 어다 다민이 떡배 시럽되기 당신이부터 녀부치그리 디송도와 저도 안다디 식디나가 지금 치지 풍부전 여부 지들는 건지 건지요는 양는데 레레잖아 겨워인 사지
बौद्ध धर्म के जो हमारे 4 स्कूल हैं 4 सिद्धांत के स्कूल हैं वो सारे के सारे इस बात को मानते हैं
So the 4 different philosophical schools of Buddhism, as said earlier, do assert that there is selflessness of persons or selflessness of persons, and which means that there is the selflessness is considered to be that selflessness which is the selflessness of a self-sufficiently, substantially existent self, and then. This is said to be the root or cause of us to be born in samsara. In other words, it is the root of all our delusions and destructive emotions. And therefore, when you understand that this kind of the self is not there, then you can overcome. When you realize the lack of such a self and self-substantially existence, substantial self, then you can overcome all the delusions as well. But Master Nagarjuna goes further to say that it is not enough just to realize such a selflessness, but as long as this clinging to the independent existence of aggregates is there, to that extent, there will be this the clinging to a self, independently existent self, and therefore, in order to realize the selflessness of a person fully, he says that as long as you are not able to overcome this clinging to a true existence of aggregates, this will not be overcome. And therefore, although the Chidamatras and also talk about the two selflessnesses, the selflessness of persons and phenomena, there is difference in the way they explain it. And Nagarjuna says that as long as you are not able to realize the selflessness of aggregates, then there is no way you can overcome all the delusions. Therefore, you need to realize both in order to overcome the delusions. And there is no difference in subtlety between the two selflessnesses. It's only a difference in the two objects on which you establish these two.
시보콜로 창아바스는 좀 전에 렁이기다 시서머신도 셰고 난체 줄라 관계 아니 공조려야 시보콜로 창아바 트리스 어다 되기 유절려야 디스토가 저기 파제 디무천지 파제 아니 되자천지 차제 아니 전에 시단천지 주유제 디숨지 도가 디 아니 직한에 직편대 버지 다 중나 조조디 디무 파게 칸에 아니 시단천배 주다 아니 되자천배 잔자로 막 편대 버지 야 디니부디 칸에 야 파만 제딩에 지기 드니 구요래 가다 디무 파 천배 디무 덴징기 차단이게 양 차단이게 양 디무 덴징 양 무튼 파야 폐여야지. 어다데 유모 도숨 천지체. 달라데네 디치데 에네 디스토가 양 고고지리야 치가 나오다 치가 가보지. 디 두지래. 에네 까르보디 선엄 그래. 단도 편지기다 선엄도 미유래. 나보디 년도 편지 미 가서 선엄 모임벨래. 다 디타데 단조 년조 디디 다 달라지 주다 되는마 에네 가라지게 냐와이다 tundu체네 디디 거다 제대비 에네 데 뇽몰레 레카나니 뇽모 독숨레 레카나니 시복 편지기 델레 에네 시버 지게네 단조 년조 편대야디 디 편로 컨트레스럼나 디탈이야 에네 점이 가서 주니체네 아니 머리 겸 로마데스 겸 로마지 지도와 디 머리고 참말이 되는 누지단에 자간신 사디 누지 니바 누지래 사디 충기하래 다 도우세네 간다에네 다 점지도 이게 정금들이 간다에네 머리고 누지 남시 주도우스 아니 남시 민수 아니 계시 럭바 소와 세바 람바 세바 아니 겨와 거시세네 양라 중이 제공도가 저자 와다 되기 코 쿠수 제기하래 때는 양라 중이 머리반에 두지는 남시세네 마 롱중기 코 쿠수 제 머리반가나 두지가나 남신가 세네 디 남시 시점부터 시고 말이 레 사베 레 산에 레 각베 네고기 셰바질 샤네 규두기 남시스 규 따가다 레 기신이 버고 식루고 봐 레 식비 식복거세 남시디 규두기 남시체 되네 식베 느버디 셀랭 쇠땀니 야 시베 땐디 차네 디 겨원 주인들산에 아니 제주기 남시신 샤샤 데레 사진에 인도산에 머리관에 챤도 거시버도 아니 nga마 여나 치마치마도 용댕에 nga마 가나 치마치마 가드야지 그래서 롱주고관에 코코스 루도고관에 냥데 토주디 또 송도와 이 좀데라는 게 셔서보시는 샤고 난체 또 스트레스 송도와 아주 졸라한 거 검정와리야 세보고로 창아봤어야 돼 내가 첨부르셔 다 이내 가서 세보고로 지르잖아요 애들 서울에서 가르쳐 있나 앤디 미다고 소야도 심부시 지고르다 미 심부디 예식 장시다가 태가문 가시다가 배지 다 지금 거 보고 차도 쳐버지도 센스들어서지 뒤도 논주르셔 뭐네잖아 심부 진짜 지금 직수 미두고로 지기다 어떤지 지기다 지주래 냐마도 로망고 공을 배지 지르지도 그 조준한다 네 삼자셰 디 미다고 충분히하래 미다고 쳐야돼 나도 들게서 배 저번에 영자라 디 가서 그게 낑르지는 미다고 충분도가 로강도 로가 내가 요새도 낑르 지식도가 좋아요 그 미다고 충분도가 제가 진짜 인데 낑르지 에 태감도 이 시장에다 계속해 엄마다고 낑르지 이 낑르지도 심도 비슷하나 이 배지 미다고 쳐야돼 배지 내라면서 선서로야. 저자 녀망에디 삼자시니 직트요래. 에시고 단디 달랄라면 말면 사주시기 세면도 아니 이 다오장스 기면도 저자와 가다 실로비 심불스로 다 지금 초월스 동안 타강 가서도 논주리 이식전에도 논주리 자 간다다 디기도 심대하디 미다고 숨겨야래 저자 시고 뉴문배 상황겠다 단 뉴문배 상황 사람이 말이 배 균제 그经济 집에 최 상황으로 계지계지 직배더니 미다고래 전에 어디 뒤충겨야래 다 이게 다데 답자시도가 나와지 뒤 타로 충겨야래 아주 저분이 타니 이게 답자가 안 되는 타와도 계속 말다 다 타바 처음 잠래 제니 대 점된데 그것이 뒤 나와들려도 청소 때 되지 아니 어디 식재죠 가서 식재도 가서 사바시 용어죠 아니 덤비주는 아주 시다되는 셔버자 간시로도 봐요 준들을 깨고로 동현 탐을 제거 주르사게 어디 소다는 되시고도 되고도가 어디 식재 티제 어디 좀 되는 거 가거래 특히 계시면도 와 다와 진짜게 양아 중이 뒤 안데 대수야 되리샤 람송 토다 의매복 코에 긴고 개미 긴고도 편순지 유진되는 코와 줄소네 땡땡 가만가면 치무치무 깨야 다 독세네 로데아드 숨겨야 진짜게 다 자와 있는 머리버디 다 머리버디 때내라 주니 그 통에 머리버디 대코난지라 몸에 머리고 안 되리 균제라 몸에 머리버디 순한 모임 belasa 지도와 다 선한 걸 내다 미외라사야디 대코난지라 몸에 머리고 자유야 돼 그래서 드네 인도산에 다 대코난지라 몸에 머리버디 애니 점바이나 봐 애니 가다 애니 지 텐들 하마지도 가두고 요레스 진리기다 대코난이라 뭐 머리버디 넣어야 돼 대코난이 인수 셰고요레스 진리지 테네 랑셴니가다 주숨이도 마톱칠 응은지반의 사버죠 테네 레다 깨와요 테르 군제 깨와다 테다 사버 니 통나 양단이도 지된로 유명이도 미심소 제니 어라 되게 자시고 레다 녀모 사버 타라 레다 녀모 남도래 자들래 저번에 동번 니 통가 가지고 사가다 치기 엔 따다래 이거도 와 어디 들으셔
From 36, verse number 36, which says through to the verse number 39, His Holiness read, as it says in with these three pathways mutually causing each other without a beginning, a middle, or an end, this wheel of cyclic existence turns like the wheel of firebrand. And to the end of 39. And so here the Buddha himself was said to have commissioned artists to actually draw the 12 links of dependent origin, the painting of to paint the 12 links of dependent origination, depicting the 12 links, beginning with ignorance and ending with aging and death. And so within the 12 links, what is shown is in the center of the 12 links, you can find, you'll see a pig, and from the mouth of the pig comes out the rooster, and from the rooster's mouth comes a snake, and the snake is in turn holding the tail of the pig in its mouth. So which shows that from ignorance comes attachment, and then from there comes anger or hatred, and then these two in turn gives rise to ignorance again, and then there is this cycle the vicious cycle of existence. And sometimes from both the rooster and the snake also are drawn to come out of the mouth of the rooster, the pig, symbolizing ignorance, rooster symbolizing attachment, and then a snake symbolizing or representing the that of anger. And so when it comes to creating the non called actions or karma, what happens is the unfortunate karma and fortunate karma are also depicted in this 12 the painting, where just outside just around this pig, the three animals is two parts, one white and called the other half black. And so the white one shows or depicts or represents the virtuous karma, and the black one the non-virtuous karma leading to unfortunate rams. And so and then around there are the 6 realms of existence, and around that the 12 links of existence, beginning with ignorance, depicted by an old woman, and then the karma, formative karma, depicted or represented by a person making pottery, and then consciousness, depicted or represented by a monkey. And within consciousness, of course, there is the causal level consciousness, which means just as the karma is created and it ceases, it leaves its imprint on that consciousness. That consciousness is what is considered to be the consciousness in this second link. And then when you take rebirth, the consciousness goes into the next life. That also is the resultant consciousness. So these two parts of consciousness are what is represented by this monkey. And then from after that, there's name and form, and then the sources of consciousness and the contact, feeling, the craving, grasping, then conception, birth or conception, and then finally aging and death. And then these regarding this, of course, it was first commissioned by the Buddha himself to depict these 12 links of dependent origination, which in turn comes through the 3 poisons, which leads to the virtuous and non-virtuous karma, and then the 6 realms of existence in the 60s. And then outside these, this whole ring is now depicted also to be held in the mouth of a giant looking called cannibal looking being. And then sometimes some artists put on some ornaments on it, like those of the 5 called the skulls on the head, and then even draw some wisdom eye. That's not true actually to do that. In the 60s I recommended to actually draw a skeletal holding these 12 links, and it was done for some time, but then nobody took care of it later. And then outside the ring, there is the Buddha is pointing to a moon, and this represents nirvana, and not that we reach moon by going out of this the earth. And then there is a verse that comes from Vinaya Sutra, which says that one should know how we create karma, and we should leave behind the negative emotions, and then overcome the Lord of Death.
Junde le Mumbai, Lande le Mumbai, pa kasore pege mishiba de pa sani, junde ki tenjung sheba zamge ya gyudan rebi chela attack zibati dotu kumaris. Dinde indizane sibo koala koya ge gyu chigres. 자자가다 저 드네 인도다 뭐라 준제기 땡중 셰바 챤니 아니 디군 기주고 람람람니 뭔도 타바르 챤 대네 대코나니 라모고 머리고 냠보 땡중그 대코나니 디 셰바 챤니 아니 대ቋ음데 아니 봐 녀모 탐색이 냠보 챤니 아니 탈벽고 봐 톡고야 저거레스 저들이 인도산에 산지 좀 된 얘기 다 띵주고 따와서디 쉬우지 개셔버리셔 스란다디 균제기 띵중 나 때는다고 띵중 니 전에 뭔도 주야다 내려 주야디 로베 까말을 실에 차신 대변나 세브쇼 송샤 세브쇼도 돼 전에 어디들이셔 이거는 내가 또 저는 어디 대대비 권에 메타와디 애니 냥송도 그래스 여다디 애니 시보 코알을 통해 지그리스 진짜 인도 탄이 세베 다 탄이 소스네면도 반다 이니 땡주고 대관하니 수신도 쉐바이나 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 땡주 아니 때는 중앙 사이드 시인주산에 탄예배 남샤디디 배드 가서 우리 그게 세명에 번이 돼야지 세명 두고 줘야지 다 들어야 탄예도 작세대 요구 말해 봐 그는 로도도 제디에 그 로도 그 지금 현단으로 그냥 로코랑 뭐라 자대로 소리를 받아 자 근데 이제는 탄예도 자고 섬지면 쇼고 탄예도 자고 된들라 탄예배 참으신기 민으바 이 세력에 시야다라르샤 미치기 딱제 전이 그 네번이번 점라 너도 사실입니다 야 미신식이 야 딱제체 다디 지단 저 가서 빼는 지단 식샤베이나 투나로지 녀미도 투나도 주댕이 shum보이네 아니 이물 다 적도가 세상하다 간주 흉대 다르샤 지 예의 메시지 참에 민문이 그러네 참에 주고 예배 천이 시주고 천이 있는 송구도가 참에 주고 알아 참에 주스로 전에 된대기다 랑 그래서 런지 똑고 로텍 진줄라 로 생기 민으버지 참아 생기 민으버서야지 타냐도 잡아 임마 달 타냐베 참아 생기 민으버 다 좋대셔 다 좀데 딱배 지게 좀데 따도 전에 예배 루스 전에 샤베 내주주체 타냐 주식을 르 민으나야 다 전담 주식이 리그에 넣는 거야 봐 그래서 네 인도산에 타냐도 예매해야 돼 전세 숨쉬기도 와 타냐도 잡아 임마 달 타냐베 참아신기 민으버 전담 주식이 리그에 민으버 디스tungu 때문에 아니 타냐도 예배시기도 와 타냐도 예배해야 돼 조직이 때문에 타냐도 예배 조조를 마도 유코랑의 거네 예매기 시작도 말와 배나 탁저 주주 진배 로티다 주기 풍불로 주주 진배 로라 로니가 로라 탁저 때문에 주 매번 넣으시 주기 풍부 때문에 주 주요 말해 매번 단절해 레디 탁저 땡라 주신 다셔버디 딱배 다니 차的연아야 탄예배 참아 생기 내용으로 와 미현식이 되는 뒤주말에 탁관에서 시행을 봐 소수인의 따져를 시대체 소수 시대에 있는 탁점이 시행으로 봐 참망감에 뒤주도 삼 전대 참망감은 롱감에 뒤주도 삼 전대인데 로지만 되게 내용으로 와 탄예배 참아 생기 내용으로 와 자상가 나를 탁절을 주주집에 로 대모라 주 차대배 소비지에디 될 탄예배 참아 생기 내용으로 와 다 풍부 때문에 주요 말에 풍부 때문에 주 따셔버 때라 탄예배 참아시 누구면도 봐. 자상가 유징원에 뭐주고 잔저래디 이내 탄예도 작배 탄예배 르네 만나기 때문에 다 예매시행도. 자 디데 인도산에 유진로의 왕기 예매시야 마도 유징원에 오브젝티브를 주고 떼내요 말이야. 디시에요. 다시 시작해야 돼. 나는 되게 고놈을 시사를 딱 나는 로리야. 저기 책 가다 가인에 된정근의 예버시 나왔다도 셴 텔레되는 취미 남도 괜히 차단 깨야 들어 봐. 다 들어야 낭색이 강사 랑저트베 다 재수 주번 짐베 된대기다 가도 다도 짐버 라고 대 장배 묘모 리직 등지 참여 장배 묘목 리직 니무도 와. 때 개심 버리셔. 자다가 등지 라고 장배 묘목라 등지 라고 객배 다음에 라고 떡배 로티기 리시 문제 원고는 거지. 디 자원에 바 꽂혀야 양야 말이야. 가려서는 묘목 타다 띠무 등지를 때는 용되게 알아. 자, 드레 이번 인도산 다데 오늘 드레 이번 인도산에 간다 다음에 참 떠네. 디니 덴지 참을 야쁘게다. 다음에 참 떠네. 덴지 참을 야쁘게 너바 채퇴하지기. 덴지기다 다음에 지 곰니. 덴지 참을 넣는데 대파 가요나 덴지라고 디디 정식 가줘야 돼. 디는 내가 전부도 와. 저상가 땡주그 대권에 있어야 돼. 다 동이 참을 찾아. 다음에 참을 찾아. 다 디셔. 다들 우메숑의 송원을 하가 지금 누가. 섬섬이 주의 다음에 송구열데 가르쳐낸 표현이 시바 된주도 집에 집을 하되기도 오마베 타녀도랑제 시겐주 덴바 지 캑베 따와지 숨고여르디 이내 그게 최신 지도 나오는 신직이 전쟁원에 예버지 현실도 와. 저자가 미대 식모토 미대 하되기라. 저도 고물루기 아니 내해서 선도 잡아라 뉴문 동진 지미 중 손데 미대 자서지기 되게 내서 하바이나 뉴문 디그리스. 자 드레이 미대 타다 시고요. 미대 타다 시야기 다베베 따와 타냐도야 랑제 캡베 따와 때 코너레샤. 다들 사비샤리 또 삼단의 시야시도 와. 좋아지 그것도 와. 저 차오를 수도 있다 된다 되지. 그래서 와다 동시에는 이니 된지 처문에 켜보지고 그래스. 어때리샤.
तो जब करा नहीं समझ पाएंगे तो जो हमारा संभार है उसको भी अधिक नहीं किया
So what we need is the understanding of law of causality, through which we can actually engage in the practices whereby we avoid negative actions and create positive ones, so that we arrive or obtain or gain higher rebirth in the next life. And then through the understanding of dependent origin, the suchness or the reality of dependent origination, we are talking about a very subtle understanding of dependent origination from the point of the Madhyamaka Prasangika system. Then we can actually go lead ourselves to liberation. So this subtle understanding of dependent origination means that things are merely designated. And so this is clearly mentioned in Kamalashila's Tattva Samgraha Punjika, which is the commentary on the difficult points of Tattva Samgraha by Master Shanda Rakshita. And so he says that by understanding law of causality, we create the causes for higher rebirth, and through the understanding of the suchness of dependent origination, that mere designation, that the nature of how things are designated, we lead ourselves to liberation. And therefore, when you have the lack of understanding of called law of causality, then you create karmas for lower rebirth. Whereas even if you may understand law of causality, still when you don't understand the suchness, reality of the dependent origination, the deeper level, then you will still create the causes for rebirth in samsara, such as the rebirth into the higher realms of existence, form and formless realms, and so forth. And so when you understand the suchness of dependent origination, then you will, of course, create the causes for liberation. And therefore, what we need to understand is that things do exist conventionally here. And so conventionally, although we may say, of course, I'm accepting something that is in convention, but then within the convention, what we have to make distinction is that although something may be said to be there, to be existent and so forth, but then it should not also, to be existent as such conventionally, it must not be invalidated by other conventional valid cognitions as well. Otherwise, things may, sometimes we may have wrong conceptions, and the object of those wrong, the distorted views, may be said to be there, but then they would be invalidated by valid cognition and the true knowledge of the objects, and will invalidate them. And so this is something that even the scientists would accept, because when they say something is there, when one scientist says he or she found something, it is not accepted right away. The other scientists do the research, and they also do the same kind of observation using the same kind of procedure, and then when they actually are able to confirm and they come to a consensus, then they say this is true. And so in the same way, in the Madhyamaka system, we have this way of coming to a consensus where the things should be to be existent conventionally means it it must be renowned conventionally, and then it must not be undermined by some other conventional knowledge, and then it must also not be undermined by the analysis into the ultimate nature of things as well. And so sometimes certain philosophical schools, come up with certain ideas, but whether they really are true or not cannot be checked through a conventional way, but then it must be checked through the ultimate analysis into the nature of things, and they can be invalidated through that as well. And so in this way, these cannot be existent conventionally. So for something to be conventionally existent, it must qualify these or fulfill these three criteria. And for example, if you have, for example, we see a snake in a mottled rope, which is put in a certain fashion, and then later, either somebody else comes and says, "Oh, there's no snake there. It's just a mottled rope." Then you look closer. You have a look at this closely, and then you also find that it is fear that you had was actually unfounded. And so, in this way, you can overcome this fear by knowing that there is no snake there, and that it's only a mottled snake. And so, although in both the cases a real snake and a snake that is projected onto a mottled rope are conventionally we designate both, but then one actually functions as a snake and the other does not, and therefore you come to the conclusion that although there's no snake there in both the mottled rope and the snake as such objectively, but then you come to the conclusion that the fact that one is snake is actually nothing to be found objectively, but merely designated. And so when you understand this, then you will see the subtle levels of negative emotions as well, and then you can see how to overcome them as well. Following the different philosophical systems, and then finally the Nagarjuna's Prasangika Madhyamaka system.
rinpoche tene tunglo tene rinpoche shaya mato penan zugu sum du sewe na zugu jima di rinpoche tunglo reslo na lab shayam doga du shana jinzu lo tene sinla di tungu tichung lo tene rinpo ringtung yaro da ringtung shaya di tene shaya mato chanam doga da teba da ma teba ngangere ba phungsum sewe ngangere ba 자, 근데 이르잖아요. 그 때는 저것이 인신절라 딱고 마드베 정신 매대보고 다 세브샤데. 자, 근데 이르잖아요. 다 때바 매바 라왕 그 주바 매바디 다 의미지 주인 것도가. 얘네 요래. 양나 마드바 요고래. 텔라 너지도가. 근데 인도다 얘네 요래. 마드바 주바라 너지에 인도잖아요.
तो श्लोक नंबर 49
So in verse 48 and 49, 49 says, where there is long, there is short, yet not by way of their own nature. When a flame is not produced, the light too does not arise. And so when we take up three fingers, of course, you can talk about this one being shorter than this and this one being longer than that. And so we can actually posit short and long in comparison or in relation to another thing, and therefore this shows that the shortness and longness are merely relative to each other, and therefore being relative and not dependent and not dependent are mutually exclusive, and then therefore although something may exist, it cannot exist independently. If it cannot exist independently, what it shows that it exists by way of designation independently, and so there's no other way we can conclude but to say that things are merely dependent.
알레 게추 톰바
거기 빠르 쳐보지랑 가요. 건조 따야 돼. 맞다. 건조 따야 들어. 탭 들어.
게부 데라
디쇼로가 거죠.
게추 톰바
맞다. 건조 따야 탭 들어. 디난 거죠. 디쇼라.
직바레
쇼랑 계지 매지. 쇼로가 디나 여러배. 맞다. 럽다.
तो आप लोग जिस श्लोक नंबर 80 में देखिए, so you can see in the श्लोक number 80
Number 80. Verse number 80 says, if a person is neither earth nor water and so forth.
가. 기부세 남 강사감 기부세 돼야지. 나도 rol이야. 풍불루유도 샤베 거네. 나서 롤 셔도가. 풍불루유도 마셔 나 차면도 가. 자, 나서야 돼. 풍부셉들 여바로 정도 롤 샤대 거라. 다바 심주셔네. 풍부 중심 되버려 봐. 중은 되버려 봤다. 자장가 기부세야. 기부하면 강사셔야 돼. 아니 중어사이 상감날에 요마레스. 충감날에 요마레스. 맹감날에 요마. 도스네 기부세미 추모이 매미 루미 난감에. 단 남시마이 사디기 샘잠바다. 다 가다지기 샘잠바 근신 등에 있는다. 근신 민등에기 이지셔바디 천실을 셔요래. 우모보 탄예도랑제 신에기 이지셔바디 디간에 강사셔요래. 강사서데 시베 규력 때네 딱버려라. 시베 규격 때네 강사셔요래. 그래서 단 로르부데 남시마이 남시 디기 때네 남시 나이 샘르와. 나이 덕이 송야지 레마도 나도 말했어. 또가 개지 이시디 나이나 애니 이시 공회 시범 것도 집에 내고 이시 찍도가. 디 샤바이나 공회 시범 것도 뭐 집에 내고 올라 나도 샤식 말와. 다 이루 밀음 거 내고 올라 공회 시범 요 말이 다 이루 뒤도 있는 나도야 메라 샤고 쳐서. 다 이루 라바데 파 가체 배 개데 내걸라 나 개샤스 럽싱 말와 나데 이루도 나를 샤바이나 이루디 가데요레 에네 나데 메누가 다파 타르도는 님을 해지 집에 외세 가는 섬던 줄이 외세다가 나를 슬라나 에네 외세데 외세 가 외세 차르세야디 샤트합니다. 자들이 이르잖아요. 시베 때는 나샤네 대부천해요 말에 다 열이야나 님을 해지 집에 외세 가는 섬다래 다 뒤에 나를 샤나 대부천도 자 근데 이르잖아 남심마이 그에메나 슬라네 아니 소주멜로 나가 남시 디디 뒤점때 나를 베슬네 용신 말했어 봐. 자 근데 이르잖아 텔레샤나 기복강스 풍부가 레 로스에 강산이야 용 말했어 근데 이르잖아 다 언더 강사 매버렸다 따든잖아 강사 요 말했어 다오나 강사 매버렸으려나 타녀르니 던 개두고요리 무슨 연구고요리 근데 이미지는 다오나 강사서도 건져졌으려나 대신 기부가 기부 컴준 되베칠 세네 기부하면 강사서야지 컴준 되버를 때는 따버려야지 때 우문주고 나려야 아니 되니 뒤니도 직진도 넘버 둥기 루줄 메메기 남제 매버는 직진 일은 늘 랑게 야나 때는 따고 있으들 야나는 때는 따고 있어 자상가 야나는 때는 따고 있는 자네 그 때문에 라왕 그 들어지 야 말해 봐 차전도 차도 차전스럽도 차전스야디 야래 차전면은 차셔 용말 봐 레디 차셔 소스는 산은 차전 민도가 차전면은 차 용말 봐 제법은 자와 용말이 자와면은 제법 용말 봐. 이 상황으로 편수 때는 샤야 모두 믿어가. 그래서 지네 이르잖아요. 가사. 그러면은 대레신의 기부 컴준 뇌베 7 기부 컴준 뇌버 때는 딱 말해. 순산에 매버데 매버치. 다두세는 이유의 매쟁에. 편수 때는 여쟁이지. 송윤도 양다마이 사대기 때는 두 잠시 마도 ngō yang takwa ngō ni zhuwa yao ma re, sōng xia, tā tī sāyabā shūjī re xia. Tā cik tī gyō ni, bē nindā rī chī lā yī nān zhō, bē dōng xia chibē kūtū, tā kwa cik tī dōn dē kī, āni sāng lū dōs tāng, dōng xia chibē kūtū lā, wā dō sī re. Āni tā kā nā xīn, phūng bū lā xia mē, tā lā tē mē, tā tē mē. Gāb tī tī shī bū phūng tē mē sūng kō rī, sō sō sū chā na, dā zhī, kā sā, 다시 저 긍신이 있어. 전에 풍불 내시면 텔러 때문에 대 때문에 다시 저 풍되면 다시 저 긍신이 있어도 상당한데 직로리아 직리도 와. 근데 그러고 고민도 전에 땡칼로 춘신 땡보신 인랑스 위에 나오로 녀나가 저와 멀리노. 사다티 소화시리기도 와. 이 전한 그 책이 역시 저래. 규메라나 가사 규메라나 제네니 때문에 리고 살라라 제메 인수 탈라라 지도가 너무 정도가 책들이 아니 대화치 뭐 틀리리 근데 지금 상담도 저베도베 심지 신우데 저제 나지 공부 мясо된 사 책도 다 주고 그래 이리 줄가 개면도 야마라도 주시 저제 줄 다들 안 샴그 책디 쇼로가 되다 개체슈들이
श्लोक नंबर 80 में इसमें कहा गया है.
So verse number 80 is a very, very important verse, showing which shows or teaches about selflessness. And so it says, if a person is neither earth, nor water, nor wind, nor space, nor fire, nor consciousness, not all of these, what person exists aside of these. And so what this shows is that, of course, when we think about ourselves, I am this or that, we have this sense of a person somewhere within these aggregates. But although this appears like it, I mean, of course, you cannot have the person in the aggregates, amongst the aggregates as such. But we have this sense of a person there within the aggregates somewhere. And then when it comes to talking about the consciousness, of course, there are some philosophical schools like the Chittamatrins which say that a self or a person's identity is in the consciousness, which is the sixth aggregate or the fifth aggregate. And so they kind of identify a person within the consciousness aggregate. But then Master Nagarjuna says here, not even the consciousness is a person. And so he counters their position of saying that consciousness is the identity. The identity of a person is within the consciousness. And for the Chittamatrins, of course, they posit the alaya vijnana. And then if you were to actually say that a person, final identity of a person is within the consciousness, which consciousness? Within the consciousness which is during the waking state, or during this dream state, or deep sleep, or when you are actually at the dying stage, and where there is the innate clear light mind manifesting. So at any of these instances, there's nothing that you can actually identify as being the person as such, yourself as such. And so because when you are dreaming, you don't have sensory consciousnesses. And when you have the sensory consciousnesses, of course the consciousness, the dreaming state and so forth is not there. And so you cannot posit any of the instances of consciousness as being the person as such. And if you were to posit any of these instances of consciousness as being the person, you would have difficulty. And so Master Nagarjuna says, nor the consciousness is the person, neither the consciousness is the person, nor all of these different elements is the person. And then he goes on to say what else is a person aside of this. And then he, as answer to this, he goes on to the next verse, as he says, a person is a composite of 6 constituents. It is therefore not real. And so what this means is that a person is designated on the basis of or based on these 5 aggregates, just as Madhyamaka Avatara by Chandrakirti also says, that a person is designated like a chariot is designated on the paths that are put together in a certain fashion to make some object. Likewise, on the basis of the 5 aggregates, a person is designated.
닭배 풍속의 최대에 가서 그게 때에 주버 잠마도 때문에 라운 거 주고 요 말이서 다들 강사가 되면 주의되면 이가로 송송아. 다 되게 막 아니 다 진짜 인도산에 다 domde 안 돼서 되게 다 셜디 셜거 그저래. 가.
고추고고.
가.
99.
고추고고. 어다 되게 식대 아니 숙지고보 명점실 난가야는 명점모스. 내디 식디 준 삼단되게 중미 숙도 칼라식스. 두 종어 이게 따로 송야래. 사초 메론 종어디디 편주 뜨주마도 종어들이신 누구자 매비지 주비야래. 다 디마 제니 중미 숙도 칼라식스. 진짜 인도 숙지고보 명점을 야 말이스. 숙지고보 명점실스. 대달 뒤지기 수속이 뒤배 가다 수속이 참배 뒤지기 쉬어지기 민상 인도산에 토리 수속 토리 깍sam기 난가야 니아야 말이스 난가야는 민상모스 대달 뒤제든 뒤마치기 추 강야 민기 딱sam심부터 매번 인도산에 뒤지 민상 니자메스 민생기 추디 당도산에 이바 인도산에 대달 때는 딱왜 명대야 명상을했어. 뺐다 심이 적도가. 생각도 합득하려야 명대 샤섬을 해서 좀 녹지 똑바디 지금 섬섬에 되는 진짜네. 그것도 와서 왕으로 그러 예배서지. 저도 이제 명대 샤섬을 했어. 녹지 그 똑바디 왕으로 도서 예배서지. 명대에 도서 죽을 예배서지. 다 대신 명상 얘기하면서도 다 명대 샤서 켜는 누가 수준 뭐 가서 중미수도 갈라시 수중하고 명점실 나가야 하는 명점모 지신 명점 얘기하면 다 제인데 아무 수고도 서도 뭐 수고하셔도 항상 롤 전다직 롤 지내고도 또 어떤 좋스다 이슈데 인다가다 가서 지지 컴로 다음에도 전부지 창화래 뭐버 통화다 내벌래고 템버데 리우 당보 스타지 좀 좋으세요
तो इस
So, verse number 99 says, just as physical forms are mere designations, so too space is mere designation. Without elements, how can there be form? So is the case with the name itself. And so usually when I recite this verse, I kind of change the sequence of these lines. I kind of recite the third line, which says, without elements, how can there be a form? And then go to say, just as physical forms are mere designations, so too is space mere designation. And so is the case with name itself. And so by doing that, it gives me true kind of conviction in the fact that there's even the name. Although things, we may say that things are, we do say that things are merely designated. And then this seems to give some kind of authority or some kind of a validation of to the consciousness or the conception that give name to others. And as if it is some kind of an independent existence. And that is nullified or rejected by saying, so is the case with name itself. And so this helps to do the Deity Yoga practices.
At that time, then since then, I made sort of continuously effort to understand that. Then my age, around 30, then begin to feel something. That immense help to understand nirvana, salvation. More understanding, more awareness, the very nature or very possibility to achieve that moksha or nirvana then the enthusiasm to achieve nirvana. So that usually called renunciation, right? Renunciation. That also immense help. Look, all sentient being, mainly, you see, in samsara, you see people are sentient being. Everyone want happy life. Everyone do not want suffering. But the ultimate source of suffering is that ignorance, distorted ignorance. That we believe, that's very true. So the method to eliminate that is the only the wisdom which understands the emptiness or shunyata. The altruism, wonderful, but not direct sort of antidote, that ignorance. So therefore, this concept is very, very important. Of course, for Buddhist, non-Buddhist, not much relevant. One time, one of my very close sort of friend, one Catholic monk, wonderful, one American. See, we often used to discuss about practice of altruism, practice of forgiveness, these things, and also single-pointed sort of meditation. This is common. So one day, he asked me about shunyata. Then I told him, don't ask that, that's not your business. This is Buddhist business. Similarly, last year in South India, Bangalore, one great sort of sadhu, spiritual leader, he really fully committed about social work, and he provide food, I think lunch, millions, I think several thousand students. So we met, and then we simply chat or talk, casual talk. And then I mentioned to him Hinduism and Buddhism like twin brothers, sisters. The Shila, Samadha, then Paranja, common. Then I told him the difference is Atma and Anatma. So that's our private business. So these three common things we both practice, so more or less same. Then concept of Atma and Anatma, that's a demarcation, Buddhism and non-Buddhism. But that's a private business. You believe Atma, so it get a benefit. So you believe that better. I believe Anatma, it benefit to me, so I believe that. So that's a private business. So those people who believe God or Creator, better to believe that. Maintain that belief. Or Allah, like that. And those people, you see, who believe Atma, independent self or soul, feel more comfortable, and then believe that better. I never say one religion is something best religion. I never say that. I am Buddhist. Sometimes I discover I'm quite staunch Buddhist. Because I learn, you see, these Nalanda masters of text. So all the critical view about God or Creator and also the independent self, a lot of argument. I study these things. So I can say I am quite staunch Buddhist. But I never say Buddhism is best religion. No. According individual's mental disposition, then we can say, oh, for your case, this religion is best, like medicine. According particular illness, then we can say, oh, for your illness, for your case, this medicine is best. We cannot say, pick up one medicine, this is best medicine. No. So similarly, we cannot say spirituality or religion is food or medicine of our mind. So according to different mental disposition, we have to judge, for your case, this philosophical view is more suitable. For your case, this philosophical view is more suitable, like that. So we cannot say one religion is best. I am Buddhist. I never state Buddhism is best. As far as philosophical field is concerned, Buddhist philosophy is the most sophisticated philosophy. That's quite clear, isn't it? So we need 300 volumes. Really, you see, they need a lot of effort to study, even read, take years. Then, not only you see learning, but contemplate and sort of make relation with our emotion. Then through that way, you get deeper understanding through your experience. So that we should call the knowledge or understand hearing level. That's just hearing. Then contemplate, analyze. Then you get second level of understanding. That's very firm because you thoroughly analyze and raise a lot of questions, a lot of sort of critics there, or questions, then analyze. So that, understand through that, so after that is the real conviction come. That level alone not affect our emotion. Then familiarize, daily basis, think, meditate. Then you get some deeper, real understanding out of experience. Now that really affect our emotion. Clear? Thank you. Now, good night. Time for sleep. You, I think most of you, again, you see dinner and some wine. I don't think anyone is who thinking go to nightclub. I don't think. No, that's good. One time in Berlin, the room of the hotel, they organize, arranges my stay. From my window, directly the other side, one sort of, a nightclub sort of was the place. So I saw from outside, from my room, different color, blue, yellow, like that. And then also I can hear zhang sheng, like that. So about my sort of time for betting, about 7, they start, they are sort of busy life. Then midnight, I wake up, watch, again go zhang sheng. Then about 4, I already got up, some meditation. I hear zhang sheng. And I look, still the light blue, yellow, go like that. So they quite sort of courageous, they sacrifice their nice sleep. Thank you, good night.